Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do a spring book haul. To be honest, my last book haul was a full year ago, so these are the books I've bought since we last spoke a year ago. These are not in any particular order, really. They're from like smallest to largest because that was how I stacked them. Okay, so we are going to start off talking with some poetry collections. First one up is Mules of Love by Ellen Bass. I've actually just finished reading this one, and so I picked this up because I follow a poetry Instagram account called Poetry is Not a Luxury. I love that account. It's really like gotten me into poetry more. It's great. If you want to start, easing into poetry, I recommend following that account on Instagram. And that account shared a poem from this collection called The Thing Is, and it is such a powerful, understated, yet just inspiring poem, and it really just shook me to my core, and I kept going back to it again and again last year. I absolutely love it. So I picked up the collection thinking, I love this one poem. I want to read more by this author, but unfortunately, the rest of the poems in this collection just aren't the same as that one. They're not bad, they're just not what I'm into, I guess. They're very much louder poems. They're kind of intense. The subject matter ranges. Some of them are pretty steamy. So if you're into like steamy poetry, I mean, it was good to read this around Valentine's Day, I guess. Just wasn't really what I wanted. So the next two collections I bought are both by Jane Hirshfield, Come Thief and Ledger. And I'm currently reading Come Thief because it's older than this one, but I think that this one is more well-known, I guess, because it was really hard to find this. I don't know if it's out of print, but it was kind of hard to track down. So with Jane Hirshfield, I feel kind of like a connection to her because when I took a poetry class like 10 years ago, we had to do a project and pick a poet that had like recently won an award or something. And I chose her, even though I knew nothing about her. I had not read anything by her. And I read her collection after for that project. And at the time, I didn't really like I liked it, but I wasn't like really drawn to it. But since following that Instagram account, I tend to like all of her poems before I realize that she's the author. And now I can just read a poem and know that she's the author. And I've grown to really like her style. She writes poems that seem simple on the surface, but have a lot of layers to them. And she tends to focus on items, I guess, or like, it's hard to explain. Poetry is very hard to explain. But the one that really like made me want to buy these two collections, a poem whose name I forget, but there's a line in it that says, I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's like, every pocket I put you in had its hole. I love that line. I want to read more of Jane Hirshfield because she keeps coming back. She keeps like popping into my life, so I feel like it's meant to be. And the last poetry collection, if you want to like really ease into poetry, I feel like the best place to start is Mary Oliver. She is just like almost universally loved as a poet, and her poems are just very beautiful and accessible. I feel like anyone could get something out of it. They tend to be focused on nature. I've read 3 of her collections in the past. 1,000 Mornings I really loved, Dog Songs, and Felicity. And this collection is the selected poems of Mary Oliver, so it goes through all of her collections and handpicks them. And I picked it up because she was involved in this. So it says, arranged by Oliver herself shortly before her death in 2019. She did recently pass away, which breaks my heart. But the fact that she is the one who chose the poems in this collection really made me want to pick it up. And actually, as I was buying it, the cashier at Books A Million said that this was like her favorite collection. So I'm excited to dip into it and read more by Mary Oliver because I truly love everything I read by her. The next book I picked up is The Secret History by Donna Tartt. If you watched my book haul a year ago, I also mentioned this. I mentioned that I bought the audiobook and the ebook, and I still have not read it because I am intimidated. And I thought, well, I'll just get a physical copy, cover all my bases. This is one of those like floppy paperbacks, which I love. And again, when I bought this yesterday at Books A Million, the cashier, who I don't know if it was the same one as the Marriott Oliver cashier, but anyway, she said that this was like her favorite book. It was published in 1994. It is Donna Tartt's first novel. She was like my age when she wrote this, which blows my mind. Donna Tartt publishes like one novel every decade. She also wrote The Goldfinch. And with all the books that I'm going to talk about today, I don't know much about them because I have not read most of them. And I tend to not like to know very much about a book going into it. But this one is, from what I gather, like a murder mystery. It's about a group of friends. They're in college. They are like classics or philosophy majors. And things start to go downhill. From what I've gathered, none of the characters in this are likable. They have questionable morality, but you still tend to root for them. I think that one of the friends gets murdered, and it is like a dual timeline where you start off knowing that this friend has been murdered, and then it goes back into time, and then you see how it unfolds. I have not read it, but I've been wanting to read it for a long time. I've just been intimidated, and I think it's time. I think I'm ready. Okay. The next book on my list is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. Again, I've been wanting to read this for a while. It was published in 2020, I think. I got this UK edition because I like the cover better than the other cover. If I have it, I'll put it up here. It's just not as this is a beautiful cover. The other one just doesn't do it for me. So this book is fiction. It is a novel, but it is inspired by William Shakespeare's son Hamnet. If you didn't know, he had a son named Hamnet. Hamnet with an N. His son Hamnet died when he was 11 years old. He died in childhood. And then like 4 years later, I think, is when Shakespeare wrote the play Hamlet, kind of borrowing the name and changing it slightly. So this book focuses on the son. But like I said, it is fiction. It's kind of like inspired, I guess, by that story. And that's all I know about it. But I've heard really good things. Actually, the last two books I picked up because the YouTuber, is she a YouTuber? I don't know. I follow Rosianna Halse Rojas. She like works for John Green, but she's also just a phenomenal human being. I'll link her YouTube channel below. I love her. Also, she has the most perfect British accent. I could just listen to her talk all day. I don't care what she talks about. I could just listen to it all day. Anyway, so those last two books I picked up on her recommendation because she has impeccable taste in books. This next book was actually written by her friend Lex Croucher, who is also a YouTuber that I've been following for many years. I love her. Actually, I need to look up if she goes by her because I think she might have changed her pronouns. One second. I don't want to misgender anyone. They, she. Okay. Her friend Lex, who again I've been following on YouTube forever. I love her sense of humor. She, she's very just deadpan, but I will link her channel below. She doesn't post as much these days, but she is just a delight. And this is her first novel, Reputation. This copy I actually bought a while ago from Book Depository because they ship internationally, and it was not available in the US at the time, but I think it just published in the US. So if you want to pick it up, it should be easier to find now. It is like set in the Jane Austen period of time. However, it is not meant to be historically accurate. I think it is more of a humorous story. It says on the cover, As if Bridgerton and Fleabag had a book baby. And I have not seen either of those shows, but it paints a certain picture. Okay, it says, through Frances and her friends, Georgiana, the main character, is introduced to a new world of wild parties, drunken debauchery, mysterious young men, and strangely alluring hands, which I love that that's obviously a tongue-in-cheek reference to the Pride and Prejudice movie. And so I'm so looking forward to this. I've really been saving it for like a rainy day. The next book, I'm gonna keep an eye on the time. We're doing good. Is The Talisman by Stephen King and Peter Straub. And this was published, I think, in 1984, so it's not a new book by any means. It's actually more of a fantasy than a horror novel. I know, like, you see Stephen King and you think horror, but I think this is more of a fantasy. I picked it up because it is my childhood friend. It's one of his favorite books. He always recommended it to me. And again, I have the audiobook, but it is so long, I kind of wanted a physical copy too. It is about a young boy named Jack. He's 12 years old, and his mother is dying of cancer. And to save her, he has to find a crystal called the Talisman. And so he sets off on this journey across America to find this talisman. But there's also like a parallel universe going on. And in the parallel universe, you have kind of your doppelganger who you can, I think, switch places with. It sounds really good. I've heard really great things about it. I don't read a lot of fantasy these days, so I feel like this might be a good way to kind of jump back into that genre. So the next book is Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. And if you caught one of my January wrap-up, I read her book Migrations. Absolutely loved it. That was her first novel. This is her follow-up novel. They're unrelated, but they're both about animals. This was published in 2021, last year. It is about a woman and her sister reintroducing a pack of 14 wolves into the Alaskan wilderness, the remote highlands, to try to rehabilitate the landscape and get it back to its natural order. What I love about her books, at least if this is anything like her past book Migrations, is she kind of takes the story of the main character and the animals, and it really parallels what the main character is experiencing, like, emotionally in her life. In this book, I think the main character is kind of coming to terms with the relationship with her sister and some things that happened in their past while they're reintroducing these wolves. But then a farmer in the community is found dead, and she's worried that everyone's going to blame the wolves, and so she goes out of her way to defend them. It also says that the man she's starting to fall for is a suspect in the murder. So, sticky situation. Next up is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. Yes, I've already read this. Yes, I already have another copy of this. But this is the anniversary edition, and it was so beautiful, and I love this book so much when I read it that I had to purchase this edition. I don't often purchase multiple editions of books, but you know, the special books, you gotta. So this one has like flowers on the pages. It has a really beautiful illustration. I don't know if you guys can see that on the cover. Just gorgeous. The actual book has these flowers on it. It is a signed edition too. And yeah, this was totally a collector's purchase. But again, I love this book. I will probably reread it pretty soon because it was phenomenal. My favorite Schwab book by far. Next up, we have Dracula. I don't think I need to explain what Dracula is because y'all probably know, but I didn't own a copy, and I like these editions. They're like the seasons editions. They have a limited quantity of like 10,000 per edition, but I thought originally that these were Amazon exclusives, but then I found this and several more like this in the local Books A Million. So if you have a Books A Million nearby, you might be able to find this. Next books we got are Monstress volumes 5 and 6. I am a couple volumes behind on reading these, but I continue to buy them because, one, I love these Barnes & Noble exclusive editions, and just the art in this series is so beautiful, just gorgeous. I can't really describe the plot because to be honest, I don't really understand the plot very, very much. There are a lot of different like types of people and animals and gods and species, and it's kind of confusing, but it is so pretty. Next up is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I think it's pronounced Smith. And I don't know much about this one. It is a graphic novel. But I have at least 2 friends who really, really just love this story. I believe it started off as a webcomic, and I kept seeing ads for it on Facebook for a long time. I love the color palette of like the pinks and the blues, and it seems like the art's really pretty. And I am probably going to get this wrong because I've not read any of it. But I think it's a retelling of Persephone, perhaps, based on the back of the book. It is a retelling of Persephone. So again, I know I'm going to love this. It's right up my alley. Next up, we have the biggest book of all time. This is Red Comet by Heather Clark. It is a biography of the love of my life, Sylvia Plath. I'm going to be reading it for at least the next year. I've started on it. I'm a little ways in. I'm also listening to the audiobook, kind of switching off back and forth. It did win an award. I think it came out last year, and it was really well received. You can tell that she really did a lot of research putting this book together. It goes through so much. I mean, like every detail of Sylvia Plath's life. And what I really appreciate about it is that it's not focused on her death. Like in previous biographies of Sylvia Plath's death really underscores the rest of how people talk about her life in a way. And the author set out not to do that with this biography because Plath, she lived a very bold and unique life, and it would be a disservice to her and to her work if all we talked about was her life in terms of her death. So I really appreciate that. I've been really enjoying it. I still have a long way to go, but I'm very happy to be on this journey. And the last book I want to mention real quick is an audiobook that my husband purchased real quick because my battery's about to die. But it's called The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. My husband and I have a shared Audible library, so he kind of bought it for me because I thought it sounded interesting. But it's all about trees. And I don't know, something about this sounds really intriguing. I know it probably sounds boring to other people, but I'm really looking forward to it. I've been kind of into nonfiction more lately. So yeah, I will let you know how it goes. I gotta go quickly because, again, my battery's about to die. I'm so sorry. But if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see future videos. Comment down below if you've read any of these books. Let me know what you think. Yeah, I think that's it. Okay, bye. As always, if you hear whining in the background, it is my puppy who is we've curbed the barking, but he's whining. He's in the living room right now, and he's very upset that I kicked him out. So I'm so sorry. It's been so long since I've done this. If something is off, if the lighting, the audio, if anything is off, I'm so sorry. I'm also testing new makeup today, so if it looks bad, just don't tell me. I'll figure it out on my own. Just pretend that it looks fine. Okay. Why are you flashing at me? What are you doing flashing at me? What's the matter? What's the matter with you? Are you still rolling? I think we're still rolling. Anyway, okay. Ugh. Heck. Filming is it's a trip. It is quite large. Am I in focus? I don't even know. I might be too close to this camera. If this whole video is out of focus, I'm probably not gonna refilm